Victor Wembanyama is out for the rest of the season with an injury that could possibly affect his life. I know that's a very dark way to start this video, but this is a very serious injury. For those of you that don't know, today it was announced that Victor Wembanyama has a blood clot in his right shoulder. The professional medical term is called a deep vein thrombosis. Now I'll be honest, when I first heard about this, there was a couple things I was thinking. Number one, I thought about a similar situation that happened almost 10 years ago. That of course being the way Chris Bosh ended his NBA career, but I'm going to talk about that a little later on in the video. But the other thing I thought about was, how is this going to affect his actual life? Because sure, as someone that talks about basketball, I'm gonna talk about the Spurs sometime in this video. But my main concern is just wondering, is this guy going to be okay? Now, quick disclaimer, and I think everyone knows this, but I'm not a doctor, I'm not claiming to be a doctor, all the information I am getting is from the public. But from everything that I've read, and again, this might not fully be 100% the truth, but from what I've seen, it seems like the survival rate for a DVT is pretty high. However, that's more of a short-term thing. When it comes to long-form health, that's where concerns can come in. For example, one study found that 96% of patients with a DVT survived 7 days after the diagnosis. However, another study found that about 63% of the patients survived 1 year after the diagnosis. Now, I think it is important to mention the fact that it seems like this was discovered pretty early on. Obviously, with any infection or any, blood clot or anything in general in the medical world, the longer it takes to discover it, the worse it could possibly get. So again, it seems like they found this as soon as they possibly could have. Wemby said that he was feeling symptomatic right after the All-Star game, which was like 5 days ago. So as long as the Spurs medical officials or whatever doctors he does go to actually treat this right, I do think he's going to be completely fine. Now, I do want to mention the fact that there have been a couple other NBA players that recently have actually dealt with a blood clot. A player that comes to mind is Brandon Ingram, who also had a blood clot in his right shoulder. And yes, just like Wemby, he has a DVT. Now mind you, this was about 6 or 7 years ago. This is when Brandon Ingram was on the Lakers, and unfortunately for him, he had to miss the entire rest of the season. But luckily for him, he made a full recovery, and the following year, he actually did great, winning the Most Improved Player of the Year award, and actually, I believe, made the All-Star game. Another player, which this is actually very recently, is Asar Thompson. His rookie season was going great, but unfortunately, late in March, it was discovered that he had a blood clot. Now, it did take a while, but 8 months later, he would end up returning, and since then has been playing pretty well for the Detroit Pistons. Now, those are not the only NBA players that have had a blood clot in their career. I found other guys like Tyreke Evans, Anderson Varejao, Udonis Haslem, and of course, the most popular and infamous one everyone talks about is Chris Bosh. But there is a gigantic difference between Chris Bosh and what Wemby is going through right now. So really quick, there's a bunch of people that don't know about the Chris Bosh situation, they just know it happened. So let me give you a quick little recap. It was exactly 10 years ago of February 2015 that Chris Bosh was admitted into the hospital for a lung test. He was complaining about chest discomfort, and it was found out on February 21st, which is 1 day after today. But it was discovered on that day that he would be out for the remainder of the 2015 NBA season after developing blood clots in one of his lungs. So right there, that is a huge difference, because of course Wemby's is in his shoulder, while Chris Bosh, it was in his lungs, which can be far more scarier. It was expected that Chris Bosh was going to be sidelined for about 6 months using blood thinning medication. Using this was essentially to make the blood stop from, moving to other places, which is very important if you are trying to stop this, because if a blood clot continues to travel throughout your body, well, excuse my French, but you're fucked. Now, luckily for Chris Bosh, he would return to the court for opening night of the following season. He played in the first 53 games of the year, but unfortunately, once again in February, he had another injury. Now, it was supposed to be just a simple calf injury, but that was not the full story, because during the All-Star break, it was discovered that he had formed yet another blood clot, but this one in his legs. He was out for the rest of the year, and it was after that that he would just never play in the NBA ever again. And unfortunately for Chris Bosh, he had to retire at the young age of 31 years old. Now, I tell you the story of Chris Bosh because what happened to him and Victor Wembanyama are not the same. While of course there was a blood clot involved, which, has a lot of people talking. The fact of the matter is, according to the Spurs medical staff, it seems like Wemby is going to be fine. As I've been recording this video, a ton of more stuff has started to come out, and it seems like they have found nothing that should be concerning his, his actual life. Which honestly, I'm super glad, because again, from a basketball standpoint, it sucks. The Spurs actually could have made the playoffs. Like, they made that trade for De'Aaron Fox. Their team has been better this season, so it was possible. But of course, without Wemby, that's definitely not going to happen. Even if it could, that's just not a good idea. Now, from everything I'm reading, again, it looks like he is going to be back at the start of next season, which is, the best possible situation. Listen, all I'm saying is I'm just hoping that this actually does get treated right, and that, the Spurs don't misdiagnose something, because blood clots can be a very tricky situation to deal with, but again, they're professionals, so I trust they know what they're doing. Now, as far as how this affects San Antonio, well, again, they're not going to make the playoffs this year. That's just not going to happen. I'm not even saying it was 100% a guarantee, but it definitely was in the cards to happen. If I had to make an educated guess, it looks like San Antonio is just going to, go the course and eventually start losing games, which, by the way, they still have their top lottery pick this year. So it seems like San Antonio could possibly be in the running for Cooper Flag. And I don't think you need to be a genius to realize how bad it would be if the Spurs were able to land 2 generational prospects within a span of 3 years. I did see something where Flag was like, shit, I want to stay for another season, but I highly fucking doubt that. If it is San Antonio that lands the #1 pick, I feel like you kind of just have to declare yourself for the draft at that point, because that is going to be one of the scariest teams for the near future. I have a video coming up very soon talking about the Spurs and how it seems like they're just always good. I swear to God, that cycle is just continuing to happen. Now, something else that I realized while recording this video is that Victor Wembanyama is not going to win the Defensive Player of the Year award anymore. In his rookie season, he was damn near close to doing it, but unfortunately, he could not get it. However, this season, it was clear he was the front runner to win the award. But unfortunately for the NBA's 65-game policy, Wemby is just not even eligible for the award. So with that being said, I feel like Rudy Gobert is going to win yet another DPOY, which if that happens, then we riot. Okay, with me actually being serious for a sec, I do think it's going to be Anthony Davis who ends up winning the award, which, I mean, sure, that's cool and all, but I really wanted Wemby to win it because this man has been balling at his young age. The man is only 21 years old and is already shown to be one of the better players in the league. In fact, some would argue he's a top 10 player right now, which I would not disagree with you if I say that. And trust me, while it does suck that we're not going to see him for the rest of the season, I'm just glad he's supposed to be healthy moving forward, because I've seen a lot of different things about average people getting DVTs, and usually it does not end well. But as long as he has the right medical staff around him, as long as he's doing the proper treatment, I think he's going to be completely fine. Regardless of that though, my prayers are still out for Victor Wembanyama and really anyone who has a DVT at this point. But trust me when I say, when Wemby does come back next year, oh, it is over for you motherfuckers.